I believe no one understands what Mike's teaching. I don't believe they understand his background, and I don't believe where all this, they understand where all this is coming from. So I think it's would behoove everyone if we take a little time tonight and just discuss what is this class in Kabbalah of Adam Facebook group, and what sources that he's studied from and using, and how Mike came about to be in this position of studying. So and because I'm like who's that, Carl Perkins, in the birth of rock and roll, he was there when it happened. That's about like where I'm at. I was there when it happened.
Yeah.
So we started studying. We started doing this class basically because I knew, and I talked Mike into it, and because I knew he was going to literally explode with all this information that he was getting if he didn't have an avenue to put it out. And so, I was saying, well, hey, let's make this Facebook group and let's go live on Facebook. I see some people doing that. Back then there was maybe a handful of people doing it. We're talking about well over 10 years ago, probably 15 at least, that we've been on Facebook.
Well, stuff. I remember that conversation me and you had, Russell, about Mike teaching. It was after a conference. It was a Noahide conference, and Mike gave up and we talked about this before, but you gave a lecture, and Russell, I remember you coming to me and goes, Mike needs to be teaching. We need to, he needs to be teaching a class. And I remember that conversation, and it just it didn't seem like it was too long after that it took off.
I think one of the main things is a lot of the Noahides that are coming in today, they don't understand the history of the Noahide movement, and particularly they don't understand the sacrifices that Vendel Jones made, and who Vendel Jones was, and he's the patriarch of this movement. And the conference you're speaking about is when I was speaking at his conference.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, actually, Russell was the one that asked me to speak at it on behalf of Vendel Jones.
Yeah.
And that was, oh man, that's back in 2005. So,
yeah, yes.
The lineage that we stand on is not our own. And I don't know how many Noahides in the world understand that tier that we were exposed to early on with the originator of this entire thing. And had it not been for Vendel Jones, none of us would be here, And so I think all of the credit, it's kind of like Abraham. If it wasn't for Abraham, you wouldn't have Jacob, If it wasn't for Vendel Jones, you wouldn't have Russell Kirk. You wouldn't have Mike Mattlage. You wouldn't have Brad. You wouldn't have any of us. And he was the foundation that laid the groundwork for all of us to be able to build upon. And when he passed away, his wife, Anita Jones, who lives, at the time, she lived about 30 minutes up the road from me here. She spoke to me and Russell, and she said, you guys have to carry on his work and his legacy. And little did we know what it would lead to. We just said, okay, we didn't know what we were doing. If we knew what we're doing, we probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that y'all were standing in my kitchen when y'all were having that conversation, and, everybody was out at the house, in the country. And I overheard her, making those comments.
Yeah. My truck's going off here. Oh, they got it. So, you know, we should never forget where we come from. And we should never forget the trail that was blazed by Vendel for probably close to 20 years before we ever got into it. And the Noahides today really need to understand the history of not only who Vendel Jones is and what he accomplished for the nation of Israel, which is miraculous. And if you're listening to this podcast and if you've never heard the history of Vendel Jones and how he ultimately helped in the war in what was it, the
67 Six-Day War?
67 war, yeah, that ultimately he was one of the reasons they won the war.
Yeah,
and
a big part of it.
And big part of it. And because of that, when he died, they took him to Israel and buried him in Israel. He's that important. And so if he's that important and we are his lineage, and don't get me wrong, he had as many people that hated him as we have that hate us, but that's all part of the territory. You know, that's just part of the territory.
We're working on that.
You know, but it's you can't compromise the message for the sake of political correctness or whatever. It's Torah. Torah is truth. And Vendel stood on truth. And that's one of the things I think that we do too, is we try to stand on the truth. And you have to source what you're saying. You have to understand what you're saying. It can't be your opinion, you know? And so that's how this class came about.
Very interesting. You know, you're right, though. I think without those pillars, you know, Vendel being, you know, the cornerstone to really the Noahide movement, the way I see it, you know, and then the other pieces fall in place. And, you know, I don't know the exact year you started teaching the class, but I know it's been going on 10 years, like Russell said, where, you know.
I'm about 17 years into actually videoing the classes. A lot of those classes, I'll be honest with you, I probably have 1,000 hours of classes, 1 hour classes that I don't have on Kabbalah of Adam or Kabbalah of Adam on YouTube that are some of the best things we've ever learned. It's all we've ever learned. But eventually, you know, my goal is to produce a website and put it all on there. I was studying with Rabbi Baxt, and Russell, you may want to lead up to how that all came about, and then I'll pick up to what we started doing.
Well, I remember back then, you know, me and Rabbi Bax was having this conversation, and we were talking about creating a class, and you know, if he wanted to do something with us, you know, our you know, little group that we had, and he said yes. But I remember asking him, you know, I said, well, you know, if you're going to teach us, you know, are you going to teach us everything, or you're going to be like some of the other rabbis and leave things out? And he said, no. He said, if we do this and I teach you, I'm going to teach you everything. And so that was the premise and the basis of the class to where that we created to where we started learning. And of course, Mike took that on and his relationship with Rabbi Baxt on to the next level. And they studied together for years and years. It was a natural fit. I think they complemented one another. I think they worked off of one another, and it was, I sat in many of their classes that they had together and watched them learn together and seen this, which was really, magic that was going on between them and how they worked off of one another, and discuss things and seeing with that pill pull. It was amazing to sit there and watch them learn together. So there was something that was really unique that was going on, this relationship between Mike and Rabbi Baxt. And that's the basis of what these teaching videos are built upon, is that relationship and that openness and that, trusting one another and giving each other the space to really articulate what they were feeling and what they were thinking. And it was a amazing experience while he was with us, and him and Mike learning. And we benefited from that relationship that he had with him, with everybody. And Rabbi Bax knew that, and knew that if he was teaching Mike, he was teaching everybody that had connection or had a relationship with Mike. And that was the background of what they were doing. Bax was really and truly, he was working through Mike and developing all of these classes and all of these teachings that are really extraordinary. And that's what I was saying earlier. I don't think anybody realizes just what these classes are made of, and the scholarship and the learning that's behind them through Rabbi Bax, bringing Mike all the way through whatever it was they were studying on. If it was the Leshem or Rav Valley or the Zohar or whatever they were working on, it was amazing to see how that came together. But it was coming together for the purpose of to share it out, which we've done everywhere with these classes.
Yeah.
What did Rabbi Bass? What did he? What was his input about the class to you, Mike? What was Rabbi? What was he always telling you?
Well,
how to teach the material, or what material you should teach, or was it just something that you put together with him?
So here, I will delve into the mind of the genius of the late great Rabbi Bax. He comes from the brother of the Gaon of Vilna. Now, the Gaon of Vilna was the one that commissioned by Hashem, that sent the first settlers to resettle the nation of Israel, which was the secret of Messiah ben Joseph. And he was the Messiah ben Joseph of his day. And Rabbi Bax was the 8th generation grandson of this line of tzaddiks, pure genius guys. And that line is what established what we know today as modern day Israel. And that they established the first yeshiva ever. So in Israel, that was their deal. They were the first ones. And so he always told me this: what I'm teaching you, most people aren't going to understand, most people aren't going to know, but you're looking for 1 in 1,000. There is a piece in the Kol HaTorah where it says the one becomes the 1,000. It's based upon 999, the formula 999, which is the gematria of Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David, is 999. When you get to 1,000, you're at completion. Adam was supposed to live 1,000 years, but he saw David was going to die be stillborn, and so he gave him 70 years of his life. Adam did. So Adam lived 930, and King David, died on his birthday, 70 years to the day. 930 and 70 is 1,000. And he said, Solomon always said, I'm looking for 1 in 1,000. He says, so when you teach, don't expect to have hundreds of thousands of people. You're not going to get it, because that's not what you're going to teach. You're looking for 1 in 1,000. And so as a teacher, you want everyone to understand and grasp the concepts of everything you're teaching. And then you have to tell yourself that's not going to happen. And so when somebody gets it, when the light bulb comes on, it's the greatest thing as a teacher you can possibly want, is to somebody goes, oh man, that was awesome. That was, but our class is not that class. Our class is that for some people.
Yeah.
One of the things, Mike, is the story that I got is early on. And, a lot of people were watching, the classes and stuff like that. And they were saying, why, Russell, why are you having us watch this class? Why are you having us do this? We don't understand anything that's being said. And it's, and this was discussing, talking with Rabbi Bax. And I said, we shouldn't be worried about knowing what he said. We should be trying to figure out what he's thinking and how he thinks. And that was the key. And years later, after that, he told me, he said, when I was teaching this very same class he was talking about, he said, I was teaching this in order to teach you how to think. And one of the greatest things he did was teach us how to think and how to reason and look at all of the text and everything and these sources and what did he call it, a Yiddish cup, and have that Jewish mindset. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts that he gave us that helps us go on today and study now that he's passed.
Yeah, I think being part of just the oral transmission is, that's an amazing part for me, because there's nobody else doing that. As far as a non-Jew.
And that is a crucial part of the lineage of Torah. And after Rabbi Bax's passing last Sukkot, I got a call, and I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but he's a very renowned Kabbalist in Jerusalem. He's one of the big guys, and he told me, I was looking for the specific book, and I'm not going to go into which book it was because most people don't have it, and most people don't need to have it. And I was able to get it, and he goes, what do you want this for? Because it's a very powerful book. And I said, I just want it for knowledge and for to learn stuff in it. He goes, I will tell you this. He goes, you can have the book, and you can teach certain things from the book, but and I've only taught one thing from the book. And he goes, but we will grant you the ability to teach what you're teaching because you come from a living transmission from Sinai. Because the Torah is taught from teacher to student, all the way back to Moses. And it's all documented in Torah. And they can trace every teacher that they have all the way back. And one of the biggest honors that I've ever had in my life was when this great rabbinic sage told me that you come from the living transmission. How many non-Jews can say that? And I'm not patting myself on the back.
You're the only one I know of.
I'm just saying it's what happened. And so Rabbi Bax, what his desire was to teach the nations the truth. was to give the Torah over to the non-Jew, to teach them the truth, to teach them the secrets of the Torah. And one of the reasons I started videotaping my earlier classes that are not even out there was because I knew, to use the cliche, I had lightning in a bottle. Coming out of Christianity, having all the questions, knowing the New Testament front and back, I knew it. I know it as good as anybody, even to this day. And even teaching and preaching and all that stuff in the Christian church, and then making this transition, I knew I had lightning in a bottle. And I knew that if I didn't start making a video documenting a video library, instead of just having notes, I got piles of notes. I've got boxes of notes from Rabbi Bakst. It would make the most epic book of Kabbalah you've ever seen in your life. And because I wanted, if something ever happened to me, and something will eventually happen to me, I wanted my children and my children's children to be able to look back and say, what did Dad know? What did Grandpa teach? What is the truth? What is the real Torah? And so I started doing that for about 3 years. And then Russell was like, hey, man, we need to put this out. Everybody needs to hear this stuff. And that's how it started, The first thing Rabbi Bakst ever taught me was Metatron. We spent years on it. And, of course, Metatron is everything. So when you're learning Metatron, you're learning the entire Torah. I mean, who starts out with that?
Right.
That was the most amazing educational experience. We didn't, and then I got into, well, let's look at Noah. How did Noah get everybody on the ark? Well, let's look at Goliath. How did David kill Goliath? Let's, all the little stories, we'll call them nursery rhyme stories that you grew up hearing. You wanted to know what the real story was. But he said, until you understand Metatron, we cannot go any further. And, that is a rabbinic mind like I've never encountered to this day.
That's interesting how it changed from not knowing Metatron, you can't go any further, to not knowing Noga, and you can't go any further.
Right. And once I understood who Havaya is and the aspects and the personas that come with that, then he took me into Noga, because Noga is where the non-Jew is. And still to this day, one of the sayings that he always told me, because, I'll argue this with anybody, but he never would. He would say, if you can't explain to me Klipa Noga, we have nothing to talk about. And if the other rabbi or the other student or whoever that was criticizing him or whatever, if they could not explain that, it was checkmate. And I've never used that because I know nobody understands it, but he knew that too. It's a catch-all. He knew that too. And if you notice in the classes, I will always talk about that. And that's one of Rav Vali's Moshe David Vali's big things is Klipa Noga, because that is one of the mechanisms to the whole thing. But I think what I appreciate most is part of the Kol HaTorah, part of the Gaon of Vilna's dissertation, if you will, is the secret of the seven sciences. Now, I'm a chiropractor by trade. I'm a scientist by trade. I have a working knowledge of science and anatomy. Physics was my best subject in college. I have great understanding of dimensionality, all that kind of stuff. So we fit like hand in glove. You know, I taught neurology and neurology dissection at chiropractic school. We were dissecting cadavers and the cranium and the spine and all that stuff. So I have a working knowledge of the body, and everything was about the body of Adam with Rabbi Bax. And so understanding the neurology, which brings you into Nakash and all that, and dimensionality and all that stuff. This is the secret of the 7 sciences of the Kol HaTorah, because what happened at the fall is religion and science got separated. And that's what Joseph got back from Egypt, was the 7 scientists. That's why now, if you want to look at the Nobel Science Prizes, physics, chemistry, it's predominantly Jews. They are the greatest scientists in the world, the greatest minds in the world, because Joseph got that back from Egypt. And
that's what the Gaon Vilna was doing as well.
That's right. That's what the Gaon Vilna was doing. So Rabbi Bax took that system and he taught that system. And he said, if you can't make science and religion communicate, you can't teach Torah. So coming from a science background, I was his guinea pig, if you would want to call it that. And because I had way more science than he had, although he was a fantastic learned guy in the field of science and many other fields, but he was a genius. He had a photographic memory. He knew the entire Torah. He knew the entire Tanakh. He knew the entire Talmud. He knew the entire Zohar. He knew it all. He could quote it. He knew the Ben Ish Hai. He knew the Arizal. He knew the Tikkuni Zohar. He knew everything. So here I am sitting at the foot of this genius that knows everything I ever wanted to know. And you know what a great feeling that was, to be able to ask the most simple or complicated question and get the exact answer. It may not be a 3-dimensional answer, but it was the right answer. And so that goes back to what Russell was mentioning a while ago. He taught you how to think. And he told me, he said, Mike, he said, look, when you're teaching, and this is why I draw on the board all the time. This is why I make little cutout figures. This is why I use all the little things I try to do. He says, if you cannot teach a 3rd grader what you know, you're not a good teacher. Yeah. And so what we're teaching is advanced doctorate level, on a collegiate level, doctorate level stuff, but we're trying to break it down to where even anybody, not calling you a 3rd grader, but anybody can get a piece of it. And he used to tell me, he says, if you teach and they understand one thing you said, that's enough. Because that one thing will change their life. They don't have to know the 1,000 things you said or the 100 things you said, but if they can know one thing and that one thing flips the switch, you've done something.
Yeah, and so absolutely.
It was an amazing, amazing experience, an amazing, amazing time. We studied 3 days a week together for up to 2 hours at a time. And then I would teach, and then it was Shabbat, and then here we go again. And we did that for almost 2 decades. One of the things that what set him apart, what sets our class apart from any other class that you see on any internet religious TV, let's call it, is the amalgamation of pulling from different sages. He used to tell me, he goes, there are many people that understand the Arizal, the Zohar, the Arizal Kabbalah, which is the Zohar. There's whole schools out there. There's whole genres of these guys that's just what they teach. And then there's these whole schools that come from the Gaon of Vilna, that all they teach is the Gaon of Vilna. And then there's these schools of the Leshem, and I said it in the class the other day. The Rizal Kabbalah is all the Sphirot and the Zah and Nook and all the little Partsufim and all the pieces of the puzzle. It's the jigsaw puzzle. It's all the pieces of the puzzle. Okay, and the Gaon of Vilna is the twin messiahs and understanding messianic process and understanding the science behind it all. And then the Leshem is the dissertation on the backside, understanding chaos and the tohu, and understanding the Samael and Lilith and all the Nephilim and all that stuff, right? And Ravali is the guy that put it all together in one bucket. And he's the only sage that has an entire running commentary in Kabbalah on the secret level of the entire Tanakh. The only one. And he said, I come from all four schools. I'm the only one that comes from all four schools.
That was Rabbi Bax.
Mm-hmm.
They were saying it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what makes Kabbalah of Adam unique is that very thing right there. So after his passing, it's been over a year now, I have stayed on that track. We still study Kol HaTorah every Wednesday night, Russell. And so we're still in the Kol HaTorah, right? We're still in the Zohar. Every time we talk about the Spherotes, we're still in the Zohar. Zah and Nook and Abba and Ima and Atik and Arik and Atik Yomin and all that stuff. And then we get on the backside and we talk about all the backside. And it's all in the Tanakh. It's in the series in Zechariah we're going through right now. And what it does, it lets you understand the 4D dimensionality. And what we try to do is try to make it. It's
like peeking behind the curtain for me.
It's like looking behind the veil.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking behind the veil. And so it's very important to me to spend each week, and I still do, with my Harusa, my person I study with, who translates all this in. None of it's in none of it's in English. It's in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Italian, and all kind of stuff. Ravali's one of the most difficult texts to understand that there ever was. That's why none of it's in English. And so each week, we get to look behind the veil at the secrets of the universe and how everything works. And as I learn it, I try to digest it each week, try to figure out how I'm going to present it in 1 hour. And normally we do 2 or 3 verses. Takes us forever. We're on class 48 in Zechariah, so we've almost been in Zechariah and Haggai for a complete year, and we're only in chapter 9 in Zechariah. But if you really want to know what's going on, and you really want to know what it says, and Rabbi Bax used to say this all the time, and I came up with the slogan, but he liked it so much he used it with me all the time. I know what it says, but I want to know what it's saying. There's a big difference. It's not what it says, it's what it's saying. That's the same thing in Talmud. I know what the Talmud says, but what is it saying? And so he could teach the Talmud that seems just so mundane. Oh, this rabbi says this, and this rabbi says that, and that one says that, but the Gemara says this, and the Tosfos says this. He could take that and show you in the Kabbalistic language what they were doing. It would change your life. There's nobody out there that I know, that I see on any page on YouTube that can do it. Not one. That was studying Talmud with him was the greatest times in my life in Torah. Because it was amazing. All of the secrets are hidden in the Talmud. Not that they're not in the Tanakh, but if you don't know the mechanics of the Tanakh, you're not going to be able to.
It'll never be revealed to you.
You're not going to know the mechanics of the Talmud. It's unbelievable. And so,
well, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Mike, is to go back a little bit. You said earlier that it was important that Rabbi Bass teach the secrets of the Torah. Why was that important to him? Did he ever tell you, or was it time? What was his explanation on it, or what was his feeling about it?
I think it was twofold. I think it was the situation he was in. Which there's some merit to it, there's some not merit to it. I do believe he believed wholeheartedly that he was sent into the nations to be a light to the nations. And he embraced that role fully. I think on some level, we used to discuss our two favorite characters, if you will, was Antoninus and Yehuda Hanasi, Judah the Prince, the redactor of the Talmud. His study partner was Antoninus, who was the Caesar of Rome. And what Rabbi Bax knew was the secret to redemption. And the secret to Tikkun was bringing the body of Adam together. And if you did not bring the nations in, Tikkun cannot happen. And so his mission was to get the Torah, the secrets of the Torah, to the nations. And that is something that there's other people that are doing it, but they're not doing it in the capacity that he did it, in the knowledge.
He believed, he was talking about, the shortness of time. I think one of the reasons why he taught the way he did is because, there was no more time left. And he was teaching this accelerated manner to get the information out because he believed that we were so close in the final footsteps, so to speak, of Mashiach, sure. And this was coming out.
I'll give you a prime example of that. There's a well-known Kabbalistic rabbi that's teaches Noahides. And when Rabbi Bax passed, I reached out to him to, teach me and help me. And he told me straight up, you need to learn Hebrew. And I'm like, well, I can pick through it, but no, if you're going to do this, you need to learn fluent Hebrew. You need to, and you know what Rabbi Bax told me? Because I asked him, I said, Rabbi Bax, do I need to learn this Hebrew fluently? He goes, we don't have time. You don't have time for that. Listen to what I'm telling you. Little did we know he would be taken so quickly.
Yeah, time was shorter than we realized.
Now, there may be a twofold thing here. Maybe his soul knew he didn't have the time, and he didn't need to waste my time with things that didn't matter at the time, and also redemption didn't have time. And so, hindsight's 20/20. You look back on it and you go, we didn't have time. Thank God I didn't spend 10 years of his life, him teaching me how to read Rav Ali, instead of him teaching me Rav Ali.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like, what did Bass say all the time? The never not. It's not this, not that. It's just, it's all about time and where you were at and where he was at in time.
And, some of his greatest sayings, it's not what you're looking at, it's where you're looking from.
Yeah.
It's not this, it's not that, it's something in the middle. And, what's so odd, when I study and with my Harusa, I have a picture of him right in front of me. So I can just look at him. I can hear him in my ear. With everything that I do during the week, I can just hear him. And I can hear what he was going to say, and so what happens is every week there's people that watch my class that I know that knew him well and that understand the translations and stuff that I've been given during the week. But it never comes out like that. It always comes out like Rabbi Bax. Every time. Because when I go through it, I can recall those things that he used to say. And it's I want to say it's a gift from him that we have that ability to draw from that well of knowledge of my rabbi used to say. Because it's well known in Torah that when you teach and speak in your rabbi's name, their lips move in the grave.
Wow.
And so this class is a culmination of what I consider to be some of the greatest knowledge and information that has ever been given forth in our generation, to our generation as non-Jews in the history of the world.
Let me ask you this.
That's what I think about our class.
Let me ask you this, Mike, and it's kind of a twofold question here. Is going forward with your class, you're gonna have people, and I'm sure you have people all the time. Me and Russell just discuss this about the pushback from the material you're teaching and who you're teaching it to. And from what you're saying, from your rabbi's perspective, is time is of the essence.
That's right.
So, maybe 30 years ago this material didn't need to be taught, but it seems to be very important in this time we're living in right now. And from what you're saying, it's what Rabbi Bass was his thinking on it too. Mm-hmm. So going forward, When you hear that pushback about the material, what's your response to that?
Well, I tell you what I've learned, and Russell will agree, I believe, is that over the last 15 years, the amount of pushback that we have had is not many people could have survived it, but we've learned one thing. What we do that nobody else does is we put out Torah. And when you put out Torah, week in and week out of that house that he's sitting in right there, 5 Torah classes a week come out of that house. Now, there is not another non-Jew on this planet that can make that claim. I'm certain of it. And when you put out Torah for the sake of heaven, not for the sake of gravitas and money or any other pomp and circumstance, but when you put it out purely for the sake of heaven, you will survive. And we have stayed in our lane the whole time. We haven't changed. We don't have an agenda other than putting out their secrets and the knowledge of Torah to whoever wants to listen to it. Our pages are open. If you want to listen to it, come listen to it. And the pushback just gives us fire. You know, right. We're old school boys. You know, it's if you want to defeat us, put out more Torah than us.
Well, yeah, and I agree 100%. And I guess the other part of that question is do you believe this material's for everybody?
No, it's not. It's not. It's for,
like you were saying, 1 in 1,000, right? I mean, it's very selective.
This class, it is not for everybody, but it's for that person that really desires to know Hashem and really desires to know what's going on.
To get that peek behind the veil, as you were talking about.
And they want to look behind the veil, you know. And not everybody has that, what's called the Shorsh Neshama, that soul root. Not everybody has that thing. And that's okay. There's a spot in Hashem's world for every living person, every living soul. But there are those, and they want to know what's going on. They want to really know. And for those that really want to know, we want to present it out there to them and say, here's the secrets. Here's what the Tzaddiks and the sages, what they really, really knew. They were geniuses. Every man in the Talmud, every rabbi in that Talmud book, the whole series, not only did they know what I'm teaching, they knew it 1,000-fold than I even know it.
Right.
I mean, Elijah is coming into their yeshiva and teaching them. Who would like to stand in that presence, right? So what all we want to do is stand on the shoulders of the ones that came before us and try to do as good a job and make them proud. I want to make Vendel Jones proud that the legacy of the non-Jew, the righteous non-Jew in Torah still exists. I want to make the legacy of Rabbi Joel David Baxt. I want to stand on his shoulders and say, here is the secrets of the Torah for the non-Jew. Time is short. Get your stuff together, because when Judgment Day comes, it is too late. You know?
Yeah.
And I think what Hashem is doing on the other side, because if Hashem didn't want what we were doing, Hashem would stop it. We wouldn't. Right. There wouldn't be a man need to stop it. Hashem would stop it.
Well, I think it's real important for everybody to know that that maybe has never been, in one of your classes or listened to one of your classes. You're sourcing the material not just from the sages' written material. You're sourcing it from their book, from the Tanakh, from the Talmud, from the Zohar, and you're reading it straight out of those books.
That's right.
This is not an interpretation of what you think the Savior's saying.
It's not an opinion class.
You're telling them, hey, this is what he's saying, and here it is, and you're tying it together into where we're at now. So people, and you're giving people the mechanics to be able to use those mechanics to look behind that veil when they engage in Torah study. That's right. The way I feel about it.
That's the goal. The goal is to being taught the language, being taught the secret code, being taught what these things are for the couple decades that I was taught it, and understanding how they think, understanding how they speak, understanding the mechanics, the maps, the metaphors, the models, as Rabbi Bax would say. You have to know the maps. You have to know the metaphors. You have to know the models. You have to know these things. If you know these things, it's plug and play. And then when you read from the Zohar, absolutely, and you read from the Talmud, and it just jumps out at you off the page. And when you read from Ravali, then you take it and you try to condense it, and then you try to, because some of the words are very hard to put over into English. Then you have to put it over so it's digestible, and you will get, and people will get those aha moments. And Russell says it all the time. It's self-explanatory now.
Well, you're not telling people what to think. You're telling people how to think, how to process the information and put it together.
Mm-hmm.
Once you do that, it is absolutely self-explanatory. If you follow this all along, like I have, there's nothing shocking. There's nothing new. It's amazing how it all connects together, and you may be amazed, but you're not shocked at what you're hearing and doing. Yeah. Once you know all these maps, models, and metaphors, and how to think and how to use that Yiddish cup and understand some of the terminology and do that, and that's one of the things we've said for a long time, is that it's kind of like a merry-go-round, and all you got to do is jump on. There's no starting point and there's no ending point. You just have to jump in and hang on, and eventually it comes all together. If you can make it to that point, it's an amazing place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, reading the Torah after listening to one of your classes, Mike, or been listening to your classes, that when I do my nightly Torah reading, is that you'll, with your class helping, my mind think, teaching me how to think and interpret the Torah, is that now I see a code along with a story. Oh, well, why was there 10 she donkeys? What's going on? Why 10? And why are they female donkeys? Hey, it's telling me something here.
Telling you something.
Every little nuance in the Torah starts to take on a life, and the story becomes a lot bigger than what's in black and white. You're bringing color into the pages of Torah.
Well, and we're just giving over what the sages say. It's not the Torah pertaining to Mike. It's not my opinions. It's not my thoughts. I'm literally just giving you what the great masters that came before us said, knew, and wrote. And Rabbi Baxter always used to say, the end is looped in the beginning. In other words, it's an infinity loop. The end is looped in the beginning. And so people come to the class and they go, man, I didn't understand a word you said. And I was like, don't worry about that. Stay in it. The terms are every week. It's the terminology. My class is a terminology class. Once you get the terminology, the knowledge is within the terminology.
The language of the branches.
It's the language. It's what's called in Hebrew, it's called the Lashon. It's the language that they're using. And all of the sages use the exact same language. There's no difference. They all know what each other's talking about. They talk in code because they know the code. So if you, like Russell said a while ago, if you get on the merry-go-round, it's going to come around and it's going to be the same language, the same Lashon, the same codes. And then like you, Brad, when you're reading in the Tanakh, you go, something's here. I know something's here. This doesn't make really good sense in English. You know?
Right. Yeah,
why
absolutely.
are they telling us about these kings that lived and died and the kings that lived and died? And why are these names different? And then when you go read Chronicles, they're reciting the same names that they were reciting in Genesis, but the names are different. It used to say Hadad, and now it says Hadah. What can they not?
What's going on?
And of course, all of the great theologians say, you know, it's not inspired by God because they can't even copy and paste.
Yeah.
Something happened.
They don't understand anything about Torah code. They definitely don't understand the language going on. And what your class is amazing at is giving people that opportunity to engage in that material and be exposed to it and be able to, it ignites what I call, Torah passion. So as you're reading this story, it becomes much more than a story. It becomes, it's as Hashem is speaking to you, like you see Hashem's fingerprint and mark on this to you, telling you, hey, there's something here. I've led you here. I've given you the material, exposed you to it. Look it up. Buy this book and learn this material.
I tell you, the greatest lesson, and I wish everyone, if you're listening to this class, if you're listening to this podcast, and if you ever come across this or whatever, if I could tell you one thing, I'm going to tell you the greatest lesson in life. Here's the secret. Listen closely. The greatest lesson that I ever learned from Rabbi Baxt, and the greatest lesson I ever learned in Torah, is the greatness of the sages. The greatness of these men is beyond compare. They're not even human. They're above human. They're so elevated. All of them. It is. You know what the Talmud says? That we are compared to the sages? We are like monkeys. I'm telling you, once you, and of course, everybody wants to diss on the Talmud, right? Oh, it's just a bunch of men writing a bunch of stuff. No,
not at all.
No. Once you really, really love what you're studying, what these gentlemen are saying, that's when you get it. And Rav Moshe Davi Vali, what's called the Ramdu, was the head sage of Rome. And so he knew everything about Christianity. And he knew all the codes about Christianity in the Torah. Adam, Esau, the whole thing. Adamite, da-da-da-da-da. Yeshua knows. He knew the whole thing. And so he is one of the greatest minds to teach from for the non-Jew ever. And I'm the only one that does it. There's
the fact that he was in the seat of Christianity and that he dealt with it and understood it more than anybody because of his proximity of being, the chief rabbi of Rome and being, so involved with things there, it's natural for him to reveal so much about Yeshu in his writings and in his commentary.
Mm-hmm. And I've fallen in love with the Ramdu. He's my guy. You know how people are. You're like, driving down the road. Okay, if I could go back in time and meet one biblical character, who would it be? Would it be Moses? Would it be Solomon? Would it be David? Who would you want to spend the day with? Moses is the obvious answer, right? I would want to spend my time with Rob Ali. I love his thought process, his teaching process. And here's the deal. His Harusa, his study partner, was the Ramchal, Lazato. One of the greatest Kabbalists ever. And Rav Ali was a physician. He was a doctor. So he knew, so there's so many things that came together here, this lightning in a bottle that has been captured for the nations. And Russell and I, we speak about this often. And one of our biggest comments to each other is if people knew what we were actually teaching, there'd be millions of people in that class a week if they actually knew what it was. But it's 1 in 1,000, man.
No.
It's 1 in 1,000. And that's the formula of Torah. So you have to go with God when he's right. So
but
for all the people that are out there that listen to it, that get it, you're special. Not by my hand.
Yeah. Well, do you think that where we're at today, that you're seeing I'm not saying a large group by no means, but you're seeing more people willing to engage in the material that you're teaching compared to when you started teaching 20 years ago?
Absolutely. It's really impressive how many people are watching. Now, I think a lot of it has to do with Russell. He sends the classes out to everybody in the world who may want to hear it. Russell is the disseminator of all things Torah and always has been. That's one of his things. If you need a piece of Torah, he's got it, and he can disseminate it to you. Right? He's the Microsoft of Torah, and so most of the reason, if you're hearing my class, it's probably because of Russell Kirk. Because
that's because I know what it's like not to have Torah and to be searching for it.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate enough to be in the situation to where we found it and created this group. So I want to be sure that I share that and give that opportunity to other people, and not limited to that. It's so if you call and ask me about something or for something, I'll see what I can do to get it to you. I always have. I've done it from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing y'all, both of y'all, as long as I've known both of y'all, I've never once seen y'all turn anybody away from anything. Y'all have always engaged in conversation, open conversation with all walks of life of people, and y'all, and I think what people don't realize is between the two of y'all know what it's like to come out of idolatry and paganism. You know what it's like to swim through that, and to try to switch your mind from one way of thinking to another. And it's not easy for everybody. You know what I mean? So there's much Torah that comes out of Russell's house, and as much Torah that you're giving in your classes. There's nowhere else that I can think of in the non-Jewish world where this amount of Torah is coming out between the both of y'all. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's an amazing thing. And it's heaven sent because, like you said, Mike, if Hashem didn't want it to happen, it just wouldn't happen.
That's right.
There's nothing that happens under his watch that he doesn't allow to happen.
That's right.
So, and I think a lot of people listen to your class, Mike. I don't know this to be a fact, but I think what you teach is, like you said, if people really knew what you were teaching and the formula you were giving people, everybody that studies Torah would be watching the class. Jew or not, non-Jew, it doesn't matter. Right. Because you are a part of that old tradition. You do have that lineage, and you've been doing it long enough not to, you're not placing with it, and you're not liberal with it. You give this is what they say, and here it is in the Torah. Let's read it. Oh, here it is in Psalms. Let's read it. Oh, here it is in the Talmud. Let's read it together. You're not telling people, hey, it says this over here. You're taking them straight to the source. Yeah, and this is what he says right here.
Yeah, here
and how many guys get on YouTube and say, what they say, and people just, oh man, did you hear what he was teaching? Man, where's the source? Oh, well, I don't know. He just said. So that's the thing and this is Russell too. Anything y'all teach, it's all sourced. It's all source material from the Torah. And I think that's amazing.
Rabbi Bax used to tell me, he said, Mike, if anybody's ever going to take you serious, if you don't source it, it's not true. He said, source everything you say. And he's the one that drilled that into my head. And so I think it's very important in the class. If we're in the Talmud, I'll say, here's the book, it's on this page right here, right
let's
here.
Let's read it together.
Yeah, let's read it, and I think that's important. And I was contacted by a Jewish lady this week. She's in California. I'm not going to say her name because I'm not a name dropper. But she has a very large women's Torah study group in Northern California. And for years, she used to be a Rabbi Bax student as well. But she always watched my class, even though she learned from him. And she still watches my class. She texts me from time to time. And in the latest class, I made that little gingerbread man,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the recent class, it shows front side, back side. It's
the 5D guy.
It's a good teaching tool, right? And not to spoil the latest class for you, but it really comes into effect this week. But she texted me and she said that she would really like me to take pictures of the names and stuff that I put on there because she wants to use that in her class. That she said that was the greatest teaching tool of front side, back side, face to face, and all that stuff she'd ever seen. And it was just a simple cutout, but it's a source.
Right.
It's a way to source the material so that I'm a very visual learner. That's why I draw on the board all the time. I'm a very visual learner. If you can draw a stick man on the board and show me on a 2-dimensional board how a 4-dimensional thing works, I can see it and then I can process it, right? So Rabbi Bax was a genius as that. He was always making these pictures and things to show the illustrations, I guess is the best word for it. Illustrations to show what he was trying to get across. And I have most of them probably. I have them all. And one of the last things he was working on was a thing he and I put together. It was called The 7 Laws of Metatron. And the only reason I haven't put this out is because his wife is working on the book. And it's a intricate part of his final book that he was doing. The book is finished. It's just not edited and put together.
Right.
And it's the 7 laws of Metatron. Now, the 7 laws of Metatron and the 7 laws of Noah, there's a big tie there, right? So, but we developed a system that we saw for 20 years that there's 7 things that happen in every single episode in the entire Torah. Doesn't matter what it is. Whether it's Ezekiel's Merkava, it doesn't matter.
So are you dropping a hint of the next upcoming class? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm dropping a hint that there is more. There's more to come.
A lot more to come.
There's a book out there.
Yeah.
There is a whole. I'll tell you what I'll do. Before he died, he sent me a paper that he worked on. Now, I've taught it out of the Talmud before, because that's kind of where we found it, about having a Mashiach mindset. In other words, you can have a 3D mindset or you can have a 4D mindset. In other words, Zvakim in the Talmud is all about preparing for the temple. It's the whole thing. So if you're not preparing for the third temple, what are you going to do when it gets here?
There's no preparing then, yeah.
You better know what's going to happen. You better know what's going on. You better know what you got to do.
This is prep time right now.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole thing about having a Mashiach consciousness. And so part of the teaching here is understanding Mashiach and teaching from a point of Mashiach and teaching from a point of Tikkun and understanding from God's point of view. It's done, right? So if we all have lived our lives, even in a Christian life, God wins. Well, if God wins, how does he win? What does it look like? What are you going to do? Are you just going to surf the wave? Do you get a free pass? What does God say? What do the prophets say? So there's a whole intricate thing here of having a Mashiach consciousness that Rabbi Bax used to try to instill on us of think like that. Don't come to me with an exile mindset. And this is what started the whole thing of Noahide to Ger Toshav.
It's very interesting.
Don't come to me.
It's just the flip of the mindset from exile to Third Temple messianic thinking.
From what's called Katnut to Godlut. Constriction to expansion. If you're not living mentally in Mashiach consciousness, you're living in exile.
Yeah, I said Messiah. I meant Mashiach consciousness.
Right. Now we live in the exile, but you don't have to think like it.
Right.
That's a big concept, man. That's a shift in consciousness. Back to what Russell was saying a while ago. He taught you how to think.
Yeah.
And that's
the key.
That's the key, yeah. Absolutely.
And so it's interesting. So if we can, like I said, encourage people to join in and look into the class, and if it's something that connects with you, then good. And if it's not, then that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
It's like I said, Mike was talking earlier. It's not for everybody. It's not what everybody likes, but and if you get it offered to you, if I offer it to you and it's not what you want, then that's fine.
It's just not
if
for
it's,
you.
Yeah. And it's just not, it's no denigration in any direction, whether you do it or whether you don't do it. It's just where you're at. But the idea is the consciousness and bringing it out there, as Rabbi Bax believe, because of the time that we're in. Sure, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, things were a lot different, and information was handled in a lot of different ways. But because of the proximity that a lot of people believe that we're in to Mashiach, then a lot of those rules of disseminating information are breaking down to where we're reaching people with Torah that would likewise never had it. And not just, reading the simple Peshat. But it's on the level to reading the secrets of the sages. If you want to read simple Peshat, we can handle that too.
By all means,
if you want to go into the Tanakh, we can handle that too. And we've got, if it's Psalms, and you have to be a lady for that one, unfortunately, but we can handle that too.
Right.
There is.
Yeah, we cover the Pardes. we cover the entire deal. I mean, we got Freelander on there. Your wife teaches a class. You have stuff. I have stuff. It is a Torah smorgasbord, a plethora of Torah. And you remember when you were a Christian and people would come up to you and say, if I could give you the secret of the world and save you from everything, would you do it? Would you do it? Everybody, yeah, I'd do it. You do that in Torah, and they're like, oh, no, I don't know about that.
Well,
I don't know about that.
Coming out of Russell's house, you talk about this, Mike. You brought it up, the amount of Torah that comes out of there. Let's just start on Monday night. He gives a basic Hebrew class, Hebrew language class, first grade level, I would say, which is hard enough for me. But that's where I need to be, You go from that on Monday night while Teresa is giving Torah lessons in, her class, same night, same house. Then you move to Tuesday. There's a Parsha reading that takes about 2 hours that goes over not just reading the Parsha. They're not just reading the Parsha. They're going in depth. They're bringing up their source of material. They're getting Zohars out. They're getting different commentary on the Torah. It's open source, baby. It is. And then on Wednesday night, your class out of that house on Wednesday night, 2 classes on Wednesday night.
And then after that,
it's called Torah. And then here it is. Here it is Thursday night, and this podcast, about the still Torah, and then on Friday, the Shabbat, and then Saturday, Russell's available. We might shoot a podcast
on Saturday.
Yeah, Freelander on Saturday night, and then
Sunday.
Sunday is usually a podcast day, or catch up on some more studying.
I challenge any non-Jew to keep up with the Torah that comes out of this system right here.
Yeah, and as we're speaking right now, there's the room next over. There's a Torah class happening inside the house right now.
Yeah, we have 2 classes at one time going on.
Right now,
we have one in the back of the house and one in the front of the house. So I mean, it's a 2 for 1.
So
and it's that way a couple of nights out of the week.
You want to know how to serve Hashem? This is the model. And you want to know what people hate? Serving Hashem. It all is what you're looking at, man. And so,
I got a question I wanted to ask y'all towards the end of this, and I'm going to start with Russell, but I want to get your answer, okay. Both of y'all in y'all's own words on this. So I'll start with Russell. If you had somebody come up to you and said, I want to start studying Torah, but I know nothing. I just know what I'm coming out of is garbage, or I don't see God in it. But every time I open the Torah and start reading it, I feel connected. Where should I start? How should I start? What would you say to them?
Well, I guarantee you, I do not know the number of Art Scroll Chumashes that I gave away. I've gave to people. I've sent to people. I don't know how many books. I literally have gave more books away than I have. That's
sure. True. That's true.
I mean,
Russell spends hundreds of dollars a month giving away Torahs all over the world.
And the neat thing about that is
I had mine without him. I wouldn't have mine. That's that book he gave me. I read from it every night.
And I tell you, I had a very kind gentleman do me a kindness that it really impacted me when he I admired the Humash that he had, and he got a new one, and he sent me that Humash. I guarantee you right here. And I thought, man, out of all the Torahs and all the books that I gave away, and to have to know what it feels like to receive one, that was a blessing that you can't repeat. And so it was very nice to get this. And so this is my favorite Chumash at this time right here, and I really appreciate it. And so I understand what it means for people to get that Chumash when they don't have anything. So the answer to your question is where to start. It's to start with the Chumash and read it like we did, like we started. Is where before we knew anybody, we sat there and for 3 years read this from cover to cover, every note, every page, and then Hashem just opened the doors up to learning for us. Unbelievable. But it was that dedication to the Word, to the Torah, that Hashem honors. And so once you show that dedication to it, and it's just a natural thing to open up, and we're where we're at today because we dedicated ourselves to learning Torah.
Yeah, I'm a testament to that. I can speak for that. Absolutely. That's what you're saying is true in essence, body, mind, spirit, everything. Absolutely.
So if you ask me that same question, you know what I'm going to tell you? You need to call Russell Kirk.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how many of those phone calls I get. Rabbi so-and-so sent me, this guy sent me to you. Hey, can you help me out with this?
Yeah. And I say that with all honesty and with all love because Russell has a gift, and I'm just Russell is the revealed aspect, and I'm the concealed aspect, I guess, a little bit. I always call us Netzach and Hod. We're two halves of one thing, and Russell has the ability that from Hashem of the generosity and the ability and the wherewithal to bring somebody up from ground zero. I, however, don't have that gift. But that's okay because I have Russell, and
that's the same thing here. It's
Russell has me on the other side where, Russell will call me and say, hey man, so-and-so's asking this and blah, blah, blah. And I'll say, boom, 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 here it is, And so we have a very unique relationship. It has been something that it's an enigma. It's I'll put it to you like this. Russell and I are probably as close as any two people on the planet, but we've never eaten dinner together other than a feast. We never go out together. We never hang out together, but we talk to each other about 5 times a day. It's the craziest relationship, because our relationship is based on one thing: Torah.
And the funny thing about it is there's nothing else to talk about when we're together.
No, we talk about Torah. We discuss Torah. If he want, he may say, "Hey man, where's this piece in Talmud, or where's this piece in that, and where's this piece in that?" And I call him all the time too. "Hey man, now where was that at?" But if somebody is coming out of Christianity, coming out of idolatry, and they want to get plugged into the right source, Russell Kirk's your man. And if you want to learn the esoteric, the Kabbalah, I hate the word mysticism because it's so funky, but then in other words, you don't need to get to me until you go through Russell. I mean, it's not a.
But is that true though, Mike? To say that let's just say that somebody seems to engage in what you're teaching, and it ignites a passion to where just reading the Torah portion doesn't really, the person really never, they just read it to read it. But I know there's people that, for some reason that's all they want to talk about is the Kabbalistic, aspects of the Torah. And is there anything? Do you think there's anything wrong with that?
That person's going to be drawn right to me. That person's going to be drawn right to me. There's no doubt.
You'd be surprised, and one of the most interesting phenomenons I've seen, because it happened. I've heard it so many times and ran across it so many times, and I'm going to use just one example, and the example is the book Inner Space. And I've had people say I've read it 3 times, and it's like I still don't get what it says and stuff like that. And this is because, what we believe and the way we've learned, and, is we learned a lot of things orally. We hear it, and we've learned the oral Torah, so to speak, orally. We've had it orally taught to us, and we also had study partners that we could articulate it back and forth with. These are very important dynamics in learning these Torah at this level, but even at the Peshat level. Have a study partner, have somebody you can talk it out with and discuss it with and ask questions with, and learn how to articulate what you're trying to understand and receive the answers, and be able to develop questions at a higher level in order to learn the next thing and to learn more about the same subject. If you learn how to ask better questions on that subject, these are dynamics that we've learned over time, accidentally or on purpose, by the guidance of Rabbi Bax to teach us to do these things. And one of the reasons I think me and Mike are the way we are is because that's exactly what we do. We study, different things, basically, but yet we study the same thing all the time. But we're back and forth, and we have that study relationship that keeps pushing us further and further, and it can push you further into knowing the Peshat better, and the Rambam and Rashi, or it can push you to knowing the Leshem and the Rizal and the Ramdu better. And so
it all depends on what that person's soul's drawn to. It depends on what you're between the both of y'all have the aspect of both. I think for me, luckily, I'm drawn to all of it. You know what I mean? And sometimes that could be kind of a distraction, and then at the same time a blessing. You know what I mean? To have, because there's not. I thought about this the other day. I was telling my girlfriend. I said, I don't know anywhere else besides this little place here in Texas we call Central Texas that I have access to the information I have between the two people I know. Because there's nowhere else. You can get on YouTube, you can watch YouTube videos, and you can learn some pretty neat stuff. I mean, there's rabbis giving, good classes, but you can't engage with them. You can't just reach out and ask a question. And y'all are so open to people asking and available. And like Mike said, if people really knew what was being taught, then there'd be thousands of people in the class. If people knew, what Russell was, the amount of Torah that was coming out of Russell's house, I mean, this would be the hub of Gare,
Yeah.
Noah,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. This is a hub, and it's something special. And I hope more people are drawn to it and see what's really going on in this area between the both of y'all, because I think it really is something. It's from heaven. Absolutely.
Russell made a comment about hearing it orally. So I've had the same experience that he had with the book Inner Space, Ari Kaplan's Inner Space. It's one of the greatest, basic, but most advanced Kabbalistic books ever written. And I did a 26-hour, 26-part series on it. And I didn't call it Inner Space. I called it Interface, like interfacing. Because if you really want to know Torah, and Brad, the reason you just said what you said, because you have access. What do you have access to? You have access to oral Torah, whether it's the basic Torah or the advanced Torah, because the secret of Torah, it's taught from teacher to student. And when it's taught from teacher to student, it's taught orally. You can't sit there and read it and understand all the nuances. You don't get it because, listen to me. Listen to me. Do you see how I just got quiet? You don't get that reading. But when I want to make a statement and you see in my eyes that I'm trying to tell you something, you see how my inflection changes? You see the nuances in my face. You see the difference in my smile. You see the quietness in my voice. That's the secret of oral Torah. You know what's important by the way they are speaking. That's what I got from Rabbi Bakst. When Rabbi Bakst wanted to tell me something important, he would lean back and he would get real quiet and he would tell me the secret. That's what you don't get by reading on your own.
Right.
So, Brad, when you say the thing that you enjoy most is the ability to engage with the people you know, that's the secret of oral Torah, because it's taught orally. Moses learned it orally. Moses taught it to Joshua orally. They all taught it orally. They didn't sit there in the tent and just be quiet and read the book.
Read books together, yeah. Absolutely.
No. You have to have a study partner. You have to have a harusa. That's why Russell and I call each other 4 or 5 times a day and just bang ideas off of each other. Here's a piece of Torah, blah, 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 blah. Well, what about this? Or what about that? And all of a sudden we come to a super conscious position. The sum is greater, the whole is greater than sum. You know?
Right.
That's the secret of Torah. And that's why when people would go watch that 26-part of Interface, which is the book Inner Space, I taught it, they would say, I read the book 3 times and I watched a series and I finally got it. I finally got it.
They heard it explained orally.
They heard it explained orally. And in between, I read it line by line, but I would add stories and I would add things in the Torah that were this part. If we were talking about Atikyomin, the Ancient of Days, I'd bring in Daniel, and he sat high on his throne, the Ancient of Days. You know, oh, so that's what Atikyomin is.
There it is, right?
You remember, you retain what it is.
And
that's what I was going to say.
Yes, and that's the secret of oral Torah. That's what you're drawn to. That's what makes your heart just beat, is that oral Torah. This class, our class, Russell's class, everything, even this podcast is teaching you oral Torah.
Yeah, you know, and you're absolutely right.
That's what it is.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what it is. It's the essence of oral Torah, because if I get angry or if I get subtle, it makes a point. It makes an emotional connection, which makes an intellectual imprint that you won't ever forget.
Yeah, because the emotions imprint it into the intellect. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'll ask Russell, because exactly what you're saying is 100% true, because I'll be reading a book and then I'll go to Russell's on Monday. You know, we always, before we start class, you know, I'll just kind of go over the material, and maybe a book I was reading. I'll say, you know, they're talking about this, they're talking about prayer and the Merkava and all this and the names. I just don't get it. And Russell, well, where is it at in the book? And he'll look at it and he'll go, well, it says right here, and he'll start to read it. And I'll be like, oh, well, yeah, I didn't. Okay, now I get it. You know, because he brings it. It's almost like you have black and white, and then the oral part is the colors. And until you see, until you can see the different aspects right out of the black and white, you just can't get it. You know,
the if you're reading it on your own, you get the outline. When you get the oral Torah, you color it in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you see what you're studying. Yeah. This is what Rabbi Bax and what Russell said at the very beginning of this podcast is, he taught you how to think. Part of teaching you how to think is learning from somebody that knows.
Yeah. And you bring that and you connect to it, and it makes it personal to you. And the reason you can remember, you know, and understand things in inner space that you couldn't before from Mike's teaching is because he puts that personal aspect and that dynamic into it. But what he's really doing is he's explaining it to you how he learned it. So how did I get it? I'll let me tell you how I got it.
He's giving you the formula.
He gives you the formula or the method or the things that work for him, that taught that how he learned it. He's sharing it with you, and he does that in every class. All he's doing is taking the Ramdu and explaining it over how he learned it, you know, and how it was given to him, and in a way you could never get from reading it. If you could read it, if it was put into English, you wouldn't understand it like that. And
even
from doing
even
that
if
for
it was
years,
in English, you wouldn't understand it.
Yeah, but because of the years of study with Bax that he did, he understands the patterns. He understands what's being said, and he can share that in a way that somebody, because he knows what it means not to be able to understand it. He can share it in a way to where it is understandable. And but it may take like I said, it may take a little time jumping on that merry-go-round and hanging on. But once you do, and once you pick it up in the formula, like I always say, it'll all come self-explanatory. You're never surprised. And Mike will be telling me, man, this is the biggest thing ever. And it's like, yeah. Sure it is. It's self-explanatory.
Until next week.
The biggest class we've ever
Until
had, next week. Ever. He goes, oh, that's just self-explanatory. Every time he just lets the air out of me, just poof.
Yeah. Somebody's got to bring you back down, baby. That's what it is.
Here's the beautiful thing. It's nothing I know. It's just what I learned. I'm just like, I'm like, you're not going to believe this, man. And he goes, oh, that's self-explanatory.
He's just keeping your feet on the ground, man. That's
Who
all
would
he's
have
doing.
known that anyway?
Yeah, who'd have known that?
Absolutely.
Who would have known that? But that's great. Well, I'll tell you what, Brad, I appreciate you giving us this opportunity tonight.
I wanted to, one last thing before we close this out, Mike, if you could give a message to the students of your class and the viewers, where we at and what's your message going forward for the class? If you could speak to your students.
Okay. We are at the precipice. I do believe. What I try to do, what most people don't know that I do, is I spend a great deal amount of time. Most people call it conspiracy theories. I'm about 38 and 0 right now on conspiracy theories, so we'll go with that.
1,000.
Okay. Yeah. So what I try to do is take all the knowledge in Torah that I've learned over the years, and then I try to look at the geopolitical aspects of where the world is, and I try to make 3D and 4D the confluence there, or the marriage there, intertwinement, whatever you want to call it. And from what I understand with the Kol HaTorah, and the times and dates of where we are very, very close. And so I've never really done a geopolitical class. I've done a few Noahide Nugget classes on this page of, hey, you may want to look for this because, but I hope that what we're teaching and what the prophets of Hashem are saying that apply to today, I try to indicate where we're at in the Adamic timeline today, that you understand we're at the edge. And I'm not going to make a prediction, but the numbers say that, we are at 2030 for some very important things. If you look at what's going on geopolitically in Israel right now, there's some very favorable things going on with Netanyahu, with his grandson, who won the Torah competition. There is an aspect of the Supreme Court that's very secular over there that is being stripped of their power, or at least abated with power, controlled with their power, which is setting up the aspect of the Sanhedrin to come in and actually have the real the judgment, the power of the judges to come in. So 2 years ago, I got an invitation to come to the King David Hotel to be a part of the reestablishment of the Ger Toshav, then the anointing of the Kohen Gadol, the anointing of the Mashiach ben David, the setting up the Sanhedrin, the Levitical priesthood, the whole thing. So never in the history of Israel has these things happened. We can see that the deep state cabal is being gutted in Ukraine, which is what Putin's doing. Putin's a good guy. Don't think he's not. He's gutting the deep state cabal, the neo-Nazis, out of there. The IMF, the central bank system, all of the global thieves are being cut down right now, which is what this whole global inflation's about. And if you follow the Kol HaTorah, it's all in there. And if you
is it self-explanatory?
It's self-explanatory.
It is self-explanatory. And the thing about it is one of the greatest things that Mike came up with, I think, here recently in his teachings, was that about the universal currency and things talking about like silver or gold and stuff like that, how that's the same price everywhere, and that
measure.
It's Mashiach's not going to come on as long as there's different measures for this currency. It has to be that single currency.
That's Deuteronomy. That's Deuteronomy 25:14. If anybody wants to go look it up.
Right.
Yeah, that was. That was one of them deals where it's just an eye opener. You get those lessons. It may be 1 out of 100. It may be 1 out of 10, whatever it is. But it ties everything together. It's like, oh, that's exactly right. And so that was one of them ideas that just kind of tied everything together for me on a lot of different levels. And there's so many of those type of teachings that come out of what Mike's doing that just brings things together. So it's, Torah is a universal type of document. It's attached to everything. It can be used in all different levels of life and people. It's and so when you understand it, you understand the maps, the models, the metaphors, and how to use it and how to look at it. It just comes together. And that's the exciting part about Torah study, is when things come together and you have an understanding that your consciousness has been elevated from what you just learned. That is a great place to be. And so I encourage people to study everything you can, go and do things that you maybe normally wouldn't do, and experience it. And what is the who was that Rabbi Meir? And spit out the seeds, or spit out the hull.
I ate the seed and threw away the shell.
Right now I feel like I'm Andy Reid, and I'm in the locker room with Andy Reid at halftime during the Super Bowl, and we're down by 11. I'm fired up by listening to y'all. Y'all light that fire in me and make me want to, just because really, Mike, I think one of the biggest things I take away from your class, and for me, I can only speak for me, is that more than anything, it's like you're telling me my place and time. This is where we're at, boys. Okay? This is, you need to know this, because this is now, if you need to engage in this, and you make that very clear. I know you don't come around and say it, but with anybody that pays any attention to the class, it's a definite overtone to the class. And I think that's exciting to know where you're at in Torah. Man, I'm right here in Torah. What we're learning is right now. So and I think that's pretty exciting.
Here's one of the things that I told Rabbi Baxt. I said, I want to know, where's Waldo? I'm Waldo, right? I'm the non-Jew. Where is Waldo? And
where is he in the Torah?
We found Waldo everywhere, and so when I come across a piece of Torah and I find Waldo, I want the non-Jews to know, you're good. You're good. The righteous non-Jew is good. And here's how it's going to happen, and that's the great thing about Rav Vali, is he's very sensitive to that. And I hope that the message that we teach is of hope, because a lot of the end time stuff is utter destruction. And where are you in that place? And here's what I know. And I know this deep in my heart tells me. Rav Vali uses that sentiment a lot. My heart tells me. And here's what my heart tells me. That Hashem will always let the righteous people, or the Torah people of the world, know what he's going to do. Why? Because he always did, and he always has, and he always will.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
The Seder is amazing. Torah is amazing.
That's right. That's right.
As Mike would say.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate it, guys, and
it's
great, and I hope people will start engaging, because this is just amazing stuff, Baruch Hashem, that I get to be a part of it. That's the way I feel about it. And I just want to thank y'all.